Have you ever stared down a situation in your life? Maybe a huge project at work or a intense personal crisis, and just felt this completely suffocating sense of dread.
Oh, absolutely. That paralyzing feeling.
Right, like a moment where the odds stacked against you were, mathematically speaking, just impossible to overcome. You look at the data, you look at the spreadsheet, and it basically just says, you lose.
Yeah, and your brain just kind of short circuits.
Exactly. Out of pure self-preservation, you just shut down. Well, today we are taking a deep dive into the ultimate masterclass on that exact feeling.
It really is the masterclass.
We are exploring the opening chapters of Book 5 of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Return of the King. And our sources today are just the direct, raw text from this epic narrative.
And the source text here is just extraordinary because it so perfectly dissects the anatomy of despair. I mean, we are looking at a narrative that puts leadership, psychological warfare, and personal agency under a microscope during a completely existential crisis.
Right, and I want to tell you right off the bat, while our source material is this massive high fantasy epic, the core insights we're extracting today are intensely practical.
Extremely relevant.
Yeah, they're about burnout, the paralyzing weight of information overload, and how ordinary individuals find their purpose when the lights are literally going out around them.
Yeah.
We're going to see how different people react when, playing it safe is just no longer an option.
Which is such a powerful setup because Tolkien physicalizes that feeling of dread immediately. He doesn't just describe a melancholic mood falling over the characters. He introduces this literal brown dusk.
The brown dusk, yeah.
Yeah, it's this weaponized smog issuing out of Mordor that just creeps across the lands of Gondor and Rohan, completely extinguishing the sun.
Yeah.
It creates this skyless world where the air is heavy and breathless. I mean, it is the atmospheric equivalent of clinical depression. War is kindled, the warning beacons are lit, and the darkness is literally suffocating.
And right in the middle of this engineered darkness, we see two established leaders bracing for the impact. On one side, there's Denethor, the Lord and Steward of Minas Tirith.
Right.
And on the other, Theoden, the King of Rohan. And their reactions to this impending doom are completely, wildly opposed. I mean, Denethor is holed up in his high tower, the Tower of Icthelion. The text describes him as looking like an old, patient spider.
That's such a chilling image.
It is. He's brilliant, he's incredibly proud, and he has been playing this massive, multi-decade game of 4D chess in his mind.
And he is also entirely obsessed with control. So when the hobbit Pippin arrives in the city, having just survived unimaginable traumas, Denethor doesn't ask for a strategic briefing on the enemy's movements.
Which you'd expect a leader to do.
Exactly. Instead, he sits Pippin down and heavily interrogates him for an hour. He picks at this poor hobbit's trauma simply to extract really granular data about his favored deceased son, Boromir.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable to read.
It really is. Denethor is bitter toward the wizard Gandalf, and he is endlessly bitter toward his own surviving son, Faramir. He actually tells Gandalf point blank that the rule of Gondor is his and no other man's.
Right.
And we find out he's even been using a palantir, a magical seeing stone, to secretly gather intel wrestling directly with the mind of the enemy to get raw data, and it has aged him prematurely.
So, okay, let me jump in here, because I look at Denethor, and I actually see a guy just doing his job.
Really? How so?
Well, to me, he sounds like a brilliant but maybe toxic CEO who is trying to save a bankrupt company, and he's the only one who has the accurate view of the ledger.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Right. I mean, the Corsairs of Umbar are sailing up the river from the south. The Easterlings are massing. The actual math says Gondor is finished. So why is realism suddenly a character flaw? If you look at the data, and the data says you're going to lose, accepting that reality isn't toxic despair, it's just true.
That is a fascinating pushback. And you know what? The math is correct. Denethor's logic is actually flawless based on the variables he can measure.
Exactly.
But his realism is missing a crucial, unquantifiable variable.
Which is it?
Imagination. Logic without imagination leads straight to paralysis. Denethor looks at the spreadsheet, sees the massive deficit, and decides that because he personally cannot engineer a victory, victory must be impossible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he cannot fathom what Gandalf calls a fool's hope. He's trapped by his own intelligence. Now, contrast that mechanism of leadership with King Theoden of Rohan.
Right, because Theoden's situation is just as grim, if not worse. He receives the red arrow from a messenger named Aragorn. And this isn't just a letter, it's this ancient black-feathered token of war from Gondor.
It carries centuries of historical weight.
Yes, and the pressure of this massive ancient alliance. Théoden is basically told Minas Tirith might already be surrounded and that he needs to bring every single spear he has.
And his response is deeply revealing. He's old. He is physically exhausted, stating that he is, quote, new come from battle and long journey.
He's already wiped out.
Completely. And he knows with absolute certainty that by honoring this ancient alliance and writing to Gondor, he likely will not write back. He even tells his niece Eowyn that there will be a need of valor without renown.
Valor without renown.
Meaning they will fight and die in a final defense that no one will even be left alive to remember or sing about.
But he doesn't hole up in a tower.
No, he doesn't.
Despite the terrible odds, he gathers 6,000 spears and rides directly into the darkness. He accepts he might die, but he chooses to act anyway.
It's a profound difference in leadership.
Yeah, and while these two established leaders are dealing with the impending storm in their own ways, the displaced heir to the throne, Aragorn, realizes that playing defense just isn't going to work anymore. The slow game guarantees a slow death.
Right.
So he decides to completely change the rules of the war.
He really flips the table. Because Aragorn receives a chilling message from the Navath brought by his kinsmen Halbarad and the sons of Elrond. They tell him the days are short. If thou art in haste, remember the paths of the dead.
The paths of the dead. Just the name alone is terrifying.
Oh, it's pure nightmare fuel. Aragorn realizes he needs to leverage an ancient curse to summon an army of oath-breaking ghosts who betrayed Isildur millennia ago.
Yeah.
But before he takes that haunted road, he does something that seems completely counterintuitive. He looks into his own seeing stone, the Palantir of Orthanc, and reveals himself to Sauron.
Okay, wait. That sounds incredibly reckless. By deliberately drawing Sauron's eye by showing the Dark Lord that the heir of Isildur is alive and wielding the newly reforged sword, isn't Aragorn putting Minas Tirith in far more immediate danger?
It seems like it, right?
Yeah, he is essentially poking the bear and forcing Sauron to strike the city way faster than planned.
And you're not the only one to think that. Gimli the dwarf actually points out that exact flaw in the plan. But Aragorn explains the hidden strategic brilliance behind the provocation.
Which is what?
It's based on a deep understanding of Sauron's psychology. Sauron's entire empire is built on total control and fear. By revealing the very sword that cut the ring from Sauron's hands centuries ago, Aragorn completely shatters that sense of control.
Oh, he triggers his trauma.
Exactly. He triggers the Dark Lord's trauma and paranoia. Aragorn knows Gondor cannot win a slow war of attrition against an enemy with infinite resources. So, by terrifying Sauron into striking prematurely, Aragorn forces a hasty, sloppy mistake.
That's brilliant.
He creates a chaotic, shortened timeline where a sudden, unexpected victory becomes mathematically possible.
He intentionally braced the stalemate. And to capitalize on that chaotic window, he has to take the paths of the dead. The text describes this journey under the haunted mountain as an absolute nightmare.
The atmosphere is just thick with dread.
Yeah, the horses are terrified. Gimli, a dwarf who has lived his entire life underground and has literally never feared the dark, is reduced to crawling on his hands and knees, completely paralyzed by this groping horror in the air.
The environment is a psychological gauntlet. In the dark, they stumble upon the remains of an ancient man, Baldur, whose bones are still clutching the closed stone door he failed to open.
Ugh, that detail always gets me.
Right. Because Baldur is a physical manifestation of the exact paralysis Aragorn is trying to overcome. Baldur had blind courage, but courage without ultimate authority and will isn't enough to survive the dark. Aragorn has to push past the bones of those who failed before him to reach the Stone of Erech and command the dead.
I think about it like this. If you're sitting at your desk looking at a project that is guaranteed to fail if you stay on the current path, waiting for the perfect safe moment is just managing your own decline.
Managing your own decline. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
The safe path is a slow defeat. Sometimes you have to step into your own paths of the dead, the great terrifying unknown where previous iterations have failed, just to seize agency and force a shift in the board.
And Aragorn leverages his ancient bloodline to find that agency. But, what if you don't have a magical sword or a royal lineage? How does someone with zero systemic power find agency when the world is ending? This brings us to the smallest players on the board. The hobbits, Merry and Pippin.
Their journeys here are pure, unadulterated imposter syndrome. For the first time, they are separated. They are surrounded by towering warriors in shining armor, speaking a strategic military language they just don't understand.
It's so isolating for them.
Merry literally describes himself as unneeded baggage, wondering he's just in the way. It's exactly like being the most junior employee pulled into a corporate boardroom during a massive crisis. You want to help, but you feel like you have no tangible skills to offer.
And the easy choice for both of them would be to just hide. I mean, they have every justification to step back and let the adults handle the apocalypse.
Yeah, nobody would blame him.
Nobody. Yet both make highly proactive choices to pledge their service. Pippin is driven by this profound sense of guilt and honor over Boromir dying to protect him. He marches right up to Denethor and offers his small sword in service.
Which Denethor actually accepts.
He does, almost mused by the gesture, but Pippin's commitment is absolute.
And Merry is driven by something entirely different. It's this genuine, warm love for King Theoden. He offers his sword, and Theoden accepts him warmly, almost like a father. But immediately after finding this courage, they both get sidelined again.
Right back to square one.
Yeah. Pippin is stuck in a dark room, waiting on a bitter old man, feeling completely useless while the battle approaches. And Merry is told by the king that he is physically too small to ride a fast horse to war and must stay behind with the women and children.
Which perfectly introduces Eowyn, who articulates the psychological toll of being sidelined better than anyone in the text.
Oh, her speech is incredible.
It is. When Aragorn tells her that her duty is to stay behind and govern her people, she completely rejects the premise. She explains that her deepest fear is a cage.
A cage.
She fears staying behind bars until use and old age accept her, and all chance of doing great deeds is permanently gone.
And, a cage isn't just about missing a battle. In a modern context, a cage is being put in a safe, comfortable box by societal expectations or a corporate hierarchy.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the slow rot of domestic or professional irrelevance while you watch the world happen without you. And Eowyn refuses the cage. She disguises herself as a young male rider named Dernhelm. As the army is riding out, she scoops the rejected hobbit, Merry, up onto her horse in the dark and whispers this amazing line, "Where will wants not, a way opens."
It's such a triumph, because Tolkien is dismantling the idea that courage is the absence of fear or the presence of immense power. Courage is simply the refusal to be sidelined.
Refusal to be sidelined.
Yeah. Merry, Pippin, and Eowyn do not have the systemic authority to change the war, but they actively choose the extreme discomfort of action over the safety of the cage. For you listening, the takeaway is you don't need to be the most qualified person in the room to impact the outcome. You just have to refuse to stay in the box they put you in.
But that will to act is tested to its absolute breaking point when the storm finally hits the walls of Minas Tirith.
The climax.
A siege begins, and it is devastating. The outer wall, the Ramasekar, is breached. Faramir is forced to retreat, losing a third of his men, and is struck down by a poisoned dart.
And the assault isn't just physical, it is a masterclass in psychological terrorism designed to break the mind before the walls even fall.
Right, the sounds in the dark.
The Nazgul, the flying ringwraiths, circle overhead. Their shrieks act as a literal sonic weapon that snuffs out human courage. The text says grown men drop their swords and weep, wanting only to crawl into holes and die.
It's visceral.
And the catapults are not just hurling rocks to break the stone, they are hurling the branded.
Oh, the heads!
Yeah, the severed heads of the fallen Gondorian soldiers right over the walls and into the city streets.
It's absolute horror. And this atmospheric pressure, this concentrated despair, is what finally snaps Denethor's mind completely. He looks at his dying son, Faramir. He looks at the impossible numbers of the armies outside. And he just abandons his post as the commander of the city.
He just gives up.
He declares, "The West has failed. Go back and burn." He takes Faramir to the silent street, down into the ancient tombs of the kings, intending to burn them both alive on a pyre. He literally tells Pippin to go die in whatever way seems best to him.
Because Denethor's logic reaches its terminal conclusion. Since he cannot control the real ending of the war, he decides to engineer his own ending. His despair becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. He removes himself from the board and sentences his son to death at the exact moment his leadership is most required.
Which forces Pippin, the junior guy in the boardroom, into open rebellion. I mean, he has to defy direct, treasonous orders from a mad, powerful boss running through a besieged city to find Gandalf and save Faramir.
The bravery that takes is incredible.
Right. And while Pippin is trying to stop a fire inside, the climax is reaching a boiling point at the city gate.
Yes. The enemy brings forward this massive battering ram named Grond. It is 100 feet long, shaped like a ravening wolf, and it has actual spells of ruin laid upon it by dark sorcery.
It's not just a piece of wood.
Not at all. With 3 earth-shattering blows, the impenetrable gate of Gondor, which had never been broken, shatters into 1,000,000 pieces. And through the ruined archway rides the Lord of the Nazgul, the Witch King.
The defenders flee. Everyone breaks. Everyone except Gandalf, who sits completely still on his horse, Shadowfax, right in the center of the breach.
Yeah.
And the Nazgul king looks down at him and delivers this chilling line, "Old fool, this is my hour. Do you not know death when you see it?"
It is the absolute zenith of the tension between despair and hope. The Witch King lifts his sword, flames run down the blade, and Gandalf holds his ground without even knowing if he can actually win the duel. And in that exact fraction of a second, a shift occurs.
A rooster crows.
Yes.
Somewhere in the back of the besieged, burning city, a completely ordinary farm animal just welcomes the morning. It's cinematic perfection.
It really is.
Tolkien uses the most ordinary, non-magical creature to pierce through the artificial magical dread created by the enemy. The rooster doesn't care about spells or ring race. It just knows the sun is coming up. And right after that rooster crows, the sound echoes from the mountains. Horns, great horns of the north, wildly blowing. Rohan has arrived at last.
And you have to look at the mechanical contrast between Denethor's pyre and Gandalf's stand.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Denethor builds a pyre because he refuses to endure the unknown. He can't stand the suspense of losing. But Gandalf stands in the breach. Gandalf does not know that the horns of Rohan will blow in that exact second. He simply chooses to hold the line. Holding the line, even for just 1 more hour, even when the spreadsheet says you are doomed, is the only mechanism that allows unexpected grace to arrive.
Wow. When the brown dusk of a crisis falls over your life, relying strictly on the raw data without leaving room for imagination leads you straight down to the silent street to build your own pyre. True leadership and true courage. Whether you are Aragorn taking the terrifying, haunted path, Éowyn refusing the cage, or Pippin standing up to a toxic authority figure requires taking action in the dark.
And as we synthesize these sources, consider a slightly different angle on Denethor's despair.
I'd love to hear it.
Denethor was entirely obsessed with preserving the past. He mourned the old glory of Gondor, he mourned his dead son Boromir, and he desperately wanted to maintain the old ways where he was in absolute control. His despair really stemmed from the realization that he could not save a past that was already gone.
While Aragorn, Theoden, and Éowyn were fighting for something entirely different.
Yes, they were risking everything to build a future they fully accepted they might not even live to see. They weren't protecting the past, they were sacrificing themselves for the next generation. So when you are paralyzed by a daunting problem, ask yourself, does your dread come from frantically trying to protect a comfortable version of the past that no longer exists?
That's a heavy question.
Are you building a pyre out of your old successes rather than risking the paths of the dead to forge a future you haven't even met yet?
That reframes the entire concept of burnout and dread for me. Because usually when we talk about a diagnosis or a terrifying spreadsheet, there's this expectation of precision. It's binary. You either preserve what you have or you lose it all.
Right, win or lose.
But as we've learned today, when the brown dusk falls, that binary machine is broken. You have to factor in the rooster crowing.
You have to.
You have to factor in the wild variables of grace and the possibility of a future that looks absolutely nothing like your past. If Denethor had actually seen the literal future in his seeing stone, that the gates would break and his city would be overrun, was his true failure, that he looked at the facts, but forgot to account for the unpredictable nature of friendship.
That's the ultimate unquantifiable variable.
It really is. In your own life, when you look at a seemingly impossible problem, are you factoring in the horns of Rohan? The unforeseen help that only comes if you manage to hold the line until dawn. Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring these texts and keep finding your own path forward.